Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO of Stronger Youth Brands, Justin Bredeman. Justin, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Frank.
Justin, it's great having you on. You are most well known for Soccer Shots, and of course now Little Kickers, also part of Stronger Youth Brands. So, gosh, you know, I guess we ran the same circles for a very long time, and we didn't even meet until like the later years, competing against each other. Isn't that the beautiful part of franchising, where I always talk about being a close community where direct competitors can talk and bounce ideas off each other, and that's certainly been true.
Totally. Kind of a unique aspect of franchising, I think. Something we as franchisors promote, right, among our own systems, and then get involved with IFA or interact with other franchisors. And there seems to be a bit of a brotherhood. Of course, we've always looked up the I9 Sports. You've done a fantastic job, of course, of founding that organization, and got to know a number of their executives. And so much respect for the I9 organization and that team. So kudos to you for what you've done.
Well, thanks, Justin. And you guys did a phenomenal job, and it took a village. Trust me, it was one cog in the wheel, but thank you. So let's get started. I brought you on because I consider you a franchise expert, and I love what you and your team did at Soccer Shots, and now you're part of a platform and you're the CEO. So I think you're going to bring so many different levels and different dimensions here on today's show. But since so many folks in our audience are really emerging founders, they're struggling, they're getting started, or people looking to franchise their company, I thought we could start by talking about the beginning and sort of the origin for you in Soccer Shots. So first off, when did you come into Soccer Shots, and tell me how the whole thing started?
Yeah, way back when. So really, I cut my teeth in franchising with Annie Ann's hand-rolled soft pretzels. So back in the late 90s, it was, fresh out of college, I was hired on as what they called a store support representative. Now, I guess they're franchise business consultants. Sounds
Sure.
Much better. But they affectionately referred to us as the pretzel police. I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, didn't know a whole lot about business, but they put me in a position where getting great experience of traveling to Annie Ann's locations, visiting with franchise owners, learning from them. Quickly realized that I didn't have to have all the answers. I'd learn something from a franchisee in northern Jersey, and then kind of take that to a franchisee in Buffalo.
Sure.
A question was asked, and I just needed to go find the answer back at the home office and get back to them. And so, I learned a lot in that position of just support, of understanding this interdependent relationship between franchisee, franchisor, and kind of became a jack of all trades in the operations of Annie Ann's. I was doing that, like I said, not too long out of college. Meanwhile, two of my buddies, Jason Webb and Jeremy Sorzano, the three of us played D3 soccer at Messiah University. They went on to play semi-professional soccer. I did not. Commentary on my quality of play. But they went on to chase the dream. And while down in Charlotte playing for the Charlotte Eagles, they stumbled upon this really kind of smallish business of sorts, where a teammate was taking soccer to a couple childcare centers.
Okay.
Now, once again, this was like the late 90s. Children enrichment, as we know it today, very underdeveloped. There wasn't much going on in preschools, childcare centers, that sort of thing. But my buddy Jer, who's really good with little kids, decided he would kind of take over this, 3 or 4 childcare business, where he would go take a bag of balls out to those child care centers, coach up the little 3 and 4 year olds. And Jason saw what Jer was doing, and Jason said, "Hey, once he stopped playing in Charlotte, he moved back up here. I'm in central Pennsylvania near Harrisburg, and he took that concept to Harrisburg, to this area, and started to knock on doors, child care centers, with a bag of soccer balls, cones, puck goals, pennies, and had little, did little micro soccer, ankle biter soccer, and he did something that Jared had not done up to that point, is he started to hire coaches, train them up, and then send them to these locations. And that was really the start of something that we realized, this is at least at the most basic level, somewhat scalable.
Yeah.
Taking the sport or the activity where the children are, which were childcare centers, preschools. Um, and at the time I was with Annie Ann's, they knocked on my door and said, "Hey, what is franchising? Can we franchise this thing?" And I said, "I think you can franchise anything. I'm not saying it's a good idea." Um, and that led us to, quote unquote, consulting breakfasts, where they kind of picked my brain about what we were doing at Annie Ann's, how that could apply to. They found the name Soccer Shots, and so that really, we started franchising in 2005.
Okay.
I was franchisee number 4 in 2005, so I had a full-time job. We had no vision of it being, it was a side hustle, and they were awarding franchises to kind of buddies, and family members.
Right.
Very underdeveloped. They too had other interests, but it wasn't until 2009 that I kind of saw them continue to grow this thing without, well, I say without much effort. It was without full-time effort. And I said, "Hey, listen, if there's ever a place for me with you guys, I'd love it." So once again, 2 college, teammates, guys who, I trust and love like brothers, and loved what they were doing, and said, "I think that I can apply what I've learned at Annie Ann's to what you'd be doing at Soccer Shots." They graciously extended me equal partnership, and in 2009, I went, full time in with Soccer Shots franchising. So that's a long-winded kind of up to that point. Little by little, investing, building the business got us to where we are today with, and we'll get into that story.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
gives a little bit of background.
No, it's great backstory. So if I remember it, you told me this when we talked months ago. Didn't the 3 of you each individually own a franchise?
We did. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I look back on that and realized that was a ingredient to some of the success that
I
we
bet.
experienced. I mean, anybody who's listening who's kind of in this emerging state knows that it's difficult to attract enough quality franchise operators to generate enough royalties to cover the costs of franchising and support. And so we had our own units that we were running, and using kind of to feed our families, so to speak.
Yeah.
While we, threw ourselves also into building and investing in the franchise system.
What was brilliant is that the 3 of you, each owning your own franchise, were able to then collectively go back and you made refinements to what you were doing. I'm sure programming was changing, but you guys were learning individually at your own location. And of course, you're getting cash flow out of it, which helps relieve the pressure of trying to keep the lights on by just trying to sell franchise and not having a company on location. But I think that is absolutely fantastic that you guys did that. And I'm sure it allowed you all to streamline your business much faster by each one of you having not just skin in the game, but like living it.
Yeah, Frank. I mean, those were long days, of course. I would
I
not.
know.
I said, all too well.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the fact that we had hands-on experience kind of in all aspects of the franchise business really helped us kind of support new
Sure.
franchisees that were coming in. But I think when I talk to folks who kind of getting into this or trying to really transition, and grow the business, I think one of the biggest challenges, right, is how do you find quality people who can operate the business day to day that allows you then to invest in the franchise system. And so there's a balance there. I can't say that it was easy, but that was something that we were able to stumble upon fairly early, recognizing there's only so many hours in a day, and
Yep.
we need to find quality people who could then run our local businesses so that we can dedicate our time to establishing the franchise system that was Soccer Shots.
So now when you got involved full time in 2009, did I hear you say that you realized that it could be done part time? Did I hear that right?
we knew that it could be done part-time. That's kind of what we were selling, so to speak. I mean, it was kind of like, hey, this is sort of a part-time gig. I was doing it part-time as a franchisee number 4 at a
Okay.
full-time job, you know. And then we had, and it was fairly early on, there was a gentleman, Eddie Russ from Austin, Texas. He's still with our franchise system today. I call him kind of the Roger Bannister, where, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, the
Yep.
first guy. And then soon thereafter, other people started, not that it was easy, but other people started to do it. He quit his job and he just like, I'm going all in on this. I remember my room or Jeremy, my partner at the time was like, oh my gosh, Eddie, do not quit your job. It's so little faith in like this thing working.
I
I was
hear
like, no,
you.
I think this can work. And sure enough, Eddie quit his job. And I think that was the first time, I mean, it seems so simple looking back of
Of
like
course.
full-time effort gets full-time results. And I think one of the biggest challenges, we still face this from time to time with, franchise owners that come into soccer shots and little kickers of like, it's a double-edged sword or kind of like it's a low cost investment, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Where you can sort of buy yourself a job and sustain and do okay. Or you can invest and you can actually build a business. And I think that becomes one of the interesting things within our space of, will franchise owners, will franchisors
Hmm.
invest when you don't necessarily have to sustain at a certain level?
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that because when I started out part time, and I think what myself and you and Jeremy and Jason probably all had in common is we probably thought early on that franchisees will work as hard as we did, and we can do if we could did it part time, so can they. I also came to the conclusion quickly when I started offering part time franchises that I wasn't getting the same results that I was getting. And so we got away from offering part-time franchises. In fact, I had a saying. It was part-time was no time because it's easy to give it up because there's not really much leverage there. And then around 2009, this is why this struck a chord with me because in 2009, when you guys decided to do this, I understand even the reason why is that we were in a recession. And it was scary for people if they were working to quit their job. And Brian and I in our office did the same thing where we revisited the part-time model because we said, well, I know we tried this back in '03 and '04 and '05, but you know what? We're going to give this a go again because it's scary that people don't want to leave their jobs. And so we did it again in '09. And quite honestly, we could not make it work. I got the same exact results. My part-timers weren't coming to national meetings. They weren't attending the franchise business coaching calls. They weren't on the webinars because they had jobs. And so it didn't work for us, but I'm fascinated by it. And I understand there are certain models that can make it work.
Yeah, I think for us, from what we're working towards and what we've understood to work, it's not ideal and it's not something that we kind of approve now. Now, I think there are arrangements where, of course, starting these types of business, you're at zero revenue day one,
Right.
and there's the ramp businesses where maybe what for year one you might do 150, 200,000. Year two you might do 3 or 400,000. So it kind of takes time to
Mm-hmm.
get up to a higher level. So you have a power couple where you have one spouse who is going all in and one spouse has a full-time job who's kind of pitching in. You can understand why there needs to be at times not, you can't completely have no cash flow
Yeah.
for a period of time, or most people can't. So yeah, trying to understand one situation where you're kind of setting them up for success, but also just speaking into, using, I think, the experience that you gain and say, hey, we want you to be, phenomenally successful. In order to do that, someone has to be full-time into this.
Somebody has to be, yeah. All right. So speaking of that, and speaking of
Yeah.
cash flow, as you mentioned earlier, what was life like for you guys as an emerging franchise?
Yeah, I love being in business with my friends. I mean, we enjoyed what we were doing. So I mean, I just some of what we, like you, I'm sure with I9 Sports, like there's just an inherent purpose in what we were doing. We
Right.
we love promoting sport among kids. Um, but it was hard. I mean, we were burning the midnight oil, doing wearing lots of hats. I think though, with having some consistent cash flow off the franchises that we were running, like our own, and continue to find people to kind of in certain spots at certain times to kind of alleviate pressure that we felt and by the way, there's three of us working on it. I think for us, I mean, I know there's horror shows around some partnerships. For us, the partnership, 1+1+1 kind of equaled like 4 for us, or 5. I mean, we
Wow.
really were able to kind of complement each other, um, and work off of each other's strengths. We tightened our belts. I mean, we did not take any debt. We were able to self-finance the growth of our business. I think too, it's taken a while. I mean, we're now in 2024, Frank.
Hmm.
So, we're talking way back, I joined in 2009. I know that there's emerging brands who are looking to supercharge their growth in
Sure.
various ways. That's not how we did it. And so it was kind of like we grew a little, invested a little, grew a little more, invested. I mean, we did in those early years, we were selling probably 12 to 16 franchises.
Hmm.
I mean, that was about what it was. It was never a 40 franchise a year growth rate. And we were blessed to get some fantastic franchise owners in the early days. I think that was really important to kind of validate the business model, and to see them grow beyond what we had expected was certainly kind of a benefit, but also it kind of raised the standard. And we started to look beyond kind of like being impressed with, wow, X $100,000 a year. That's amazing. Going, no, actually, these can be $1 million businesses. And that's a different mindset
Right.
than just celebrating 80,000, or, serving several hundred kids versus serving tens of thousands of children. And so that really evolved, I think, through the early days till we started seeing kind of these franchise owners take flight, and us kind of being like, okay, we need to invest. And I think that's something I learned from Annie Ann's, looking at what they had done is continue to invest in personnel, in their product lines, et cetera, and was able to apply that to Soccer Shots.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, what do you attribute it to that allowed you guys to break through, and you guys didn't stall out, where
Yeah.
so many franchisors do stall out? That crazy statistic: 84% of all franchisors never get to 100 units, and every year we have 400 new franchisors and 400 come off the board. But what do you attribute it to, Justin, on how you guys broke through? And I guess it does come back to your background in Annie Ann's and understanding infrastructure and who you had to bring on, I would think, is part of it, right?
Yeah. Listen, it would be nice to be able to kind of succinctly say, hey, here are the one, two, or three things. I think that, as I reflect back, I think this is kind of a no duh thing is, listen, we were dealing with soccer and youth soccer. We could appeal to, like, total addressable market's pretty big with soccer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So boys and girls. I know I9 does really great with soccer as well. Boys and girls, I think the changing demographics of the United States, there's a population growing that loves the sport. I think that, like, we started to, and this is, hindsight.
Sure.
I think parents, the more that you're convenient. We're going to places, right? There was
Right.
like specs of things that we were just doing that we didn't really know that this was part of the success of it. But, like, I don't think you can ever be too convenient for your customers. I think that we were
Right.
also in a space, I9 was the same way, is the same way, of a space that was somewhat under-professionalized, meaning we had, I think,
Yeah.
a lot of well-meaning people who are pouring themselves into children. And I've had some great coaches, so have you, it's like, but there's a volunteer coaches often that, are kind of by accident. Maybe they're good with kids. Maybe they know the sport.
You're right.
It's rare. Maybe they're both.
Right. Right.
And so I think what you have with hopefully any healthy franchise system, and even in the very beginning, is like, how do you effectively leverage, I think, the experience that's being gained by not only the franchisor, which means adding people to your team, but also like the franchise community. And this is like often quoted, but I'm not sure if it's often like practiced, especially when it's emerging, when you're like just trying to put out fires, trying to sell franchises. I mean, early on, we put together a franchise advisory council. I mean,
Hmm.
even when we were really small, it was just like,
How early on? How many franchises did you have?
I think at the time, maybe 40 franchisees.
Okay, that's a good number.
But even before that, maybe we had 25. You could, invite them to Jared's living room and we'd all sit
Right.
around. What do we need to count? But I think establishing this habit of getting franchise owners to speak into what's happening, how do we evolve, not being too proud to ask the questions of like, how can we get better? But also being competently confident where you're also coming to the table saying, well, we also are running these businesses, or we're also learning this from a perspective because we interact with not just one franchise, but 40. And so this is a tension that I think has to be managed, hopefully in a real healthy way, that has contributed greatly to, I think, our success at Soccer Shots and now at Stronger Youth Brands.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply adding people to the team, the right people. Now we've added the wrong people, and there's been turnover. We haven't gotten that 100% right.
Us too.
Um,
Yep.
has brought tremendous like insight, and I think that I'm a big proponent of developing people within our own organization, but there's also great advantage to
Mm-hmm.
bring people from other experiences into your organization that accelerate and really grow you in places that you just wouldn't have expected. So those are a few things that come to mind as to how we kind of managed through that. I mean, one, I think incredibly lucky that it was the right product. But I also think that ongoing evolution and investing in that product in our team has paid dividends. And that, I see that at the franchisee level too. Yeah, it's like there's this almost like a fear of, hey, we know this works, but we're, we can't afford a director of coaching or someone who helps me with administrative tasks. And, well, let's do the math. How many locations do you need to add? How many enrollments? So that's maybe a word of just encouragement and challenge to those who are just, oh, I don't know if I should do it.
Right.
If you've got a great product and families or customers are buying that product, investing in that experience, man, you're shortchanging yourself if you're not adding to your team.
Yeah, I think fellow founders would probably this would be good for them to hear because it sounds like that we both went through this. Is that they're going to have staff? You have staff on your team early on that were right for that time period. It doesn't mean that they're going to be right when you're 50 or 100 or 200 franchises. There are people that aren't right for the very beginning, and they're better when there's a lot more structure. So it's okay that you are going to have staff turnover, but everybody had a place for the time period that they were supposed to be in your life or in your company's life. Wouldn't you agree?
Agreed. I think too, Frank, I mean, we all, if we've kind of started our businesses, we've all like created positions and first time put a person in that position.
Right.
Maybe that person's great. But eventually, I think what we've realized is like it's rare the teammate who's going to make this organization their career, I mean, depending on where they are, but they stay 5, 7 years, maybe 3. When they vacate, hopefully in a healthy way. And we've kind of looked at it like, hey, we want this to be a place of growth. And we
Mm-hmm.
know that this might not be your forever place. So if you're able to learn something, contribute something, and have a positive experience, step out and go somewhere else, great. That's awesome. But what we found is once that person leaves, there's now a point of reference where we're like, okay, this person was great at ABC, but man, would it be great to have somebody who has D, E, and F and have all those things?
Right.
And you start better understanding the needs of the organization there. So sometimes their departure can be kind of a fortuitous thing that allows you to have a person, like you said, have someone who comes in who's prepared to take you to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we found. It's like you've almost like, and then if that person leaves, you're now at a different level and you're looking for somebody different for that third iteration of position. So
Totally. Justin, sounds like you guys always had this really strong but consistent growth. It was controlled growth.
yeah,
For emerging founders that are listening to this, what are your thoughts when it comes to franchise development? Are you proponents of in-house versus FSO? What are your
right,
thoughts? And what was it like back then? What did you guys do?
right. Uh, yeah. I mean, once again, we took a certain path of growth, and I laugh because I'm not sure if anyone has a silver bullet when it comes to franchise development.
Right? No, I don't know. I'm waiting to hear
Yeah, right.
it.
I'm still looking for it too. So if listeners are like, "Hey, what's the secret sauce?" I unfortunately don't have all the ingredients. I can tell you kind of what we did, what
Right.
we've kind of felt like has worked and what hasn't. Um, we did not outsource Fran Dev. We never have. We did try, the broker route for a period of time, but never went all in that route. And I think some of that was several years ago. I think that our particular industry is now better known
Mm-hmm.
for, brokers, that folks who would be able to understand and articulate this. I mean, one of the challenges I think we face in our types of businesses, Frank, you probably experience this too, is, there's not a bricks and mortar. You don't have a line going out. You don't have,
Right.
compared to Annie Ann's, I mean, you walk by the pretzel shop and you're like, oh, that smells amazing, gets a sample. You understand the business model. For a lot of even our customers, our families, they're with their daughter at a soccer shop, maybe at their park program. They're 8 other, kids, and they're like, oh, this is great. What they don't maybe understand is there's dozens of these
Right.
in a territory that comprise a business. And we also do a lot of our stuff in childcare centers where parents may not even see it,
That's
So
true.
the explanation or the business model isn't easily visible to folks. And so I explained that to mean, like, I think that outsourcing it was a little bit of a challenge several years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because it was just a hard thing to, and quite frankly, there weren't many franchise systems or franchises that were scaling to what I think many outsourced brokers would say as a viable business or a viable franchise,
Sure.
I-9 soccer shots, maybe notwithstanding. And so, we did it in-house. We just felt like we knew our product, knew our, franchise system. We were able to articulate what we were looking for, pretty big about, culture
Mm-hmm.
in our arena, and trying to find core value fits. We didn't always get it right. I mean, but we felt like in-house was for us, the best way to do it. Now, it was slower, I think, growth. I mean, I know that there's a number of reputable brokers who, bring in dozens and dozens of candidates. Wasn't our experience. And so that's kind of what we've done, and, felt like if we have a strong business model, that our franchise owners validate, that our FBR scores are strong,
Mm-hmm.
that we will find good people. Now, of course, we do social media and we do a lot of other things to kind of get the word out about the opportunity. And we've been able to grow through, employees who have moved from one territory, become a franchisee in another place, franchise partners who have recommended family and friends. So we've grown that way pretty effectively. But it hasn't been, it hasn't been like, hey, get to 100 units in 3 years type deal.
Yeah. No, it's not perfect. We actually found the same path as
Okay.
you do, in-house
Yep.
through franchise development, and we had very limited success with broker groups because same reason. Broker groups really didn't understand what the heck we were, like what we did. So no matter how much we educated the broker groups, I still felt like when it filtered down to the actual individual broker, they kind of made up what they thought we were and then
Right.
would sell it. And then we would get the lead. I'm like, no, that's not exactly what we do. We don't sell uniforms. We're actually a league. We had to really kind of backtrack and explain what we did. And it goes back from the very beginning. When there's only a handful of competitors, it makes it more challenging. I think it's probably easier now with the amount of
I
folks
think
that are
so.
in youth enrichment now. So Justin, what about, so you guys are growing, things are going well. I'm curious, at what point did you guys entertain private equity, and what was the trigger for all that?
Well, it goes back to the partnership that is Jason, Jared, and me. We had been in business together for a long time. And, we had a mentor who has since passed, Harry Loyal, who kind of was a guy who, did you know
I
Harry,
remember, yeah, he was with
Frank?
wasn't he with
Okay.
the iFranchise group?
Okay. So he was not part of the iFranchise group, but he was kind of
He was,
um,
he did some consulting for them, I
he did
thought.
some consulting. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually consulted. I actually met
Along with
Harry.
Steve Beagleman,
Yes, I know
so
Steve.
well
Yes,
known,
years ago.
so
Yes.
shout out to Steve. But Harry was, a bit of a Obi-Wan Kenobi of sorts to
Yes,
us.
I remember Harry.
And so he asked us a question. It was very, like, it's early on. I feel like I don't know what year we were in business, but we had kind of brought him in to sort us out. And of course, Steve Beagleman's a great cheerleader, very knowledgeable, encouraging. And then Harry would just kind of give it to you right between the eyes and be like, "This is what you're not doing well." We're like,
Right.
"Oh, okay,
Yes.
you're right." But his question to us was like, "Hey, what do you want?" Like, "What do you mean? What do I want?" Like, "Well, we want to be successful. We want to do the." They're like, "No, no. as partners and even as, owners of small businesses, you really need to get specific about answering that question. And for us, it was sort of we kind of laughed at it a little bit, but he kept coming back to it. And we're like, I don't know. I can't put words to exactly what I want. Success. We want to, maybe make a little bit of money so that we can pay for kids' colleges and we're going to have a happy franchise system, serve a lot of kids. And he was just kept driving at that. And so it really forced Jason, Jeremy, and I to be able to speak to what is that we would like to kind of get from the experience, both our role within the organization to, eventual exits. I think we understand as humans, as business owners, we're not going to live forever. And yet we don't often plan that way. While we loved what we were doing, he really kind of pushed on this, like, well, what does it look like to exit? And so we had iterative conversations about that really then drilled down into, okay, we the three of us have families, but different stages. We realized some of the complications of passing it along to families. And so what we also had were kind of antenna up as to kind of what was going on within the just franchising space in general.
What year was
And
this?
so I would say we started seriously kind of poke our head up and look around in 2017,
Okay.
where we're like, okay, we started to learn, okay, there's varying degrees of like exit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to just stay in until you're 65 years old and hopefully sell and retire, nor do you have to like, sell at age whatever 40 and walk away. There's varying degrees of, how can you um take a few chips off the table, but also find a partner for us that would allow us to continue to invest, to continue to like grow, to continue to find ways to strengthen. There's a certain responsibility I think every franchisor has to their franchisees.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's kind of like how do you create sort of a win-win-win situation that's, a win for the franchisor, a win for the franchisees, and a win for customers. And I think we started thinking about that, talking to people, talk to other franchisors, bankers, private equity firms, um, and strategic buyers. And what we kind of happened upon once we kind of answered that question, what do we want is, the three of us had varying answers to that. Jeremy wanted to not be involved in the organization anymore. He wanted to
Mm-hmm.
sit on the board and explore some innovative things that he does. He's a bit of a pioneer and a starter. Jason was interested in, continued to run a part of his franchise, and he has, other business interests, but just wanted to stay on operational in a certain role. I wanted to divest myself of the local franchise and really throw myself into being the best executive I could be on the franchisor side. And so that kind of then we're like, well, okay, how about do we all want to ride off together? Do we want to like, and so we decided, yeah, we would at some day and like be able to kind of ride off together. But we'd also like to take a few chips off the table, as well as then bring, somebody in who could maybe think broadly and maybe allow us to be a bit more opportunistic
Mm-hmm.
and strategic in how we might expand and find opportunities for all stakeholders within Soccer Shots. And so there was a process there that began slightly in 2019 as you and everyone else who's listening, 2020 hit and we were kneecapped,
Mm-hmm.
just survival mode. 2020, we got into 2021, early 2021. And I think, Brian Sanders and I have had this conversation, like it was kind of crazy, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like it wasn't much of a U-shaped rebound. It was just kind of V-shaped and things kind of skyrocketing with, youth
Yeah.
sports, which was awesome. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we were ready to grind it out for 2, 3, 4 years to get back to 2019 levels. And so we embarked on an official process that was run by an investment banker, and we found Susquehanna Growth Equity. And they represented a partner that checked a lot of boxes. Well, I'm not a founder. I'm an early, partner in Soccer Shots. I have obviously I kind of bleed Soccer Shots orange, as does Jason and Jer. Jason wanted to stay in. I wanted to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the conversations we had with various suitors, there's varying degrees of like, what does the future look like?
Mm-hmm.
And with Susquehanna, our views aligned very nicely. And so in December 2021, Susquehanna Growth Equity became a majority shareholder of Soccer Shots franchising. And at that point, we then established Strong Youth Brands. So that
Okay.
was the platform that we established and was a big part of what our shared vision of the future looked like, was putting together that platform.
And so I assume that platform that was created, it was part of the vetting process that you guys thought, okay, this Soccer Shots is the start of something where we're going to start developing and acquiring maybe some other concepts that will be complementary to Soccer Shots. Was that part of the vetting process? Was that part of like the vision for you guys that you're like, this is, since you knew you wanted to stay on?
Yeah, it was, I would say, and this becomes something of maybe a recurring theme for us, Frank, where I wouldn't say that I think we are strategic and becoming more so,
Mm-hmm.
but I also think there's often like a loose vision. Maybe we write down a little bit of like exploring it that then
Uh-huh.
allows us to add more pixels to the picture. And so, there were some more established and respected youth enrichment platforms already. There were some that were kind of emerging
Mm-hmm.
with Susquehanna, given kind of what Jason, I wanted for Soccer Shots, for us, hopefully not selfishly, to stay involved and have, a voice or have a pen that we could help craft our future with. Susquehanna allowed us that and said, "Hey, you'd be the keystone or the first concept on the franchise platform. We want to work with you to um, to vet other possible partners, other sister concepts." And we said, "Great, we're really interested in that challenge." And I get back to opportunity. We feel like, hey, we want to make sure that we are providing opportunities for our franchise partners, for our team here at the Franchise Support Center. And so we had developed some relationships with the leadership at Little Kickers
Mm-hmm.
prior to even the thought of establishing Strong Youth Brands. And so it'd been a number of years running that we had known Christine Kelly, who's the founder of Little Kickers. By the way, we are based in UK. And there's a slight confusion. There's a Little Kickers with L Kickers in the
Okay.
United States. We're Little Kickers. We're an international outside of the US. So that is the brand that we brandish outside the US. And so we were able to consummate a deal with them to acquire them 100%, and they're the second concept on the Strong Youth Brands platform. So we've been supporting and operating them for the last year and a half.
Wow. Okay. Oh, Justin, one of the things that I find in talking with you is I think one of the secrets to your success, and Jeremy and Jason, is that you guys have been extremely fluid and very flexible. I hear flexibility throughout your entire career. Like you were very open-minded to how are we going to do this, and always looking to see, always open to the possibilities where you weren't stubbornly deciding this is how we're going to do it and that's it. And I keep hearing that. It just is a common thread throughout your entire career.
It's a good catch, Frank, a good call out. I think there's this balance, of course. I think with franchising, even though we have been that,
Mm-hmm.
but I also can think through the history of, and this, I think as franchise systems mature, you do find what you think is the best way to do something. And so you have to kind of tell the franchise owners who have legacy, and you smile knowingly, like, yeah, I know how you did that way, but we found this is the way that we need to do it as a system.
Right.
And so, and that has been tough for us. I think
Yeah,
that
of course.
we have been probably much more historically flexible and kind of allowing kind of some innovation to occur. As you grow as a system, there's an inefficiency to supporting doing something three ways, right?
Right.
Inconsistency in a customer's experience. You know, I think of a number of examples where at some point we're like, you know what, we need to make a decision. There needs to be focus with what we do and how we do it. And one example of this is, I mean, throughout the years, we've always been approached of like, well, you say 2 to 8, why don't you go up to age 14? And
Right.
that's one thing we're like, you know what, we could, but it would water down what we do, and
Mhm.
we can't support that well.
Yeah.
So no, we're not going to. I'm not saying we never will, but
Mhm.
like right now, that's what we're focusing on. And so, yeah, it's like, when do you make those decisions that like, nope, we need to focus. We need to stay confined to what we do, and this is the best way, at least as we know now. And
Right.
then we're open up your aperture and say, you know what? No, we actually need to explore other things and be open to the input of. I do think one thing is important is like, I think you always have to take a posture of listening
Hmm.
and understanding, and then you have to pray for the wisdom of to what decision to make once you get that information and
Right.
input.
Yeah, there's flexibility, and then there is some sort of line in the sand that we decide this is what the brand is, and if it violates what we deem the brand is that we can best serve, it's kind of an easy decision if you think about it, right? Like for us, I never went back down to age 2. It was just it's a
Right.
different model, and
Right.
I know that both brands believe in age appropriate programming.
That's
And
right.
a 3, 4-year-old soccer looks vastly different than a 10, 11, 12-year-old soccer program. And it's knowing what lane you're in and being really, really good at whatever, who you are, and not being afraid to share with franchise owners after listening to them and saying, here's what we are, here's why we're not going to do X, Y, or Z. And you want to help them understand it. And at the end of it, hopefully they agree.
Well, that particular case, and yeah, I can completely relate. Is like once we started to dial into understanding what the addressable market is and has been for our age groups, we realized there's 30 million children ages 2 to 8 in the United States, and we're maybe 2%, I think is what two a
Oh
little bit
yeah,
over where we're
right.
at. So
That's
there's
the amazing part of the business is that as much as people know of those brand names and franchising in soccer, barely even scratching the surface.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of business to be had.
So, all right, let's go back to little kickers now. So now you have
Sure.
your child and you have the adopted child. So what was life like now bringing the adopted child that you don't know the history and there's
Yeah.
just there's legacy there. So now you're the CEO of this platform and you bring this little kickers on. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was our first time doing that. So, I've got that one experience, but I had heard some horror stories of, integration, and the thesis is around, of course, bringing on compatible franchise concepts that we also can have some shared services with. I
Hmm.
mean, the fact was that Little Kickers had a small but mighty franchise support team. We had done a little vetting there. We knew that the brand was really strong, especially in the UK, in Canada, South Africa, 25 countries in all, but those those countries in particular. And so there's staying power there that was very familiar to us. We also had just meeting the founder, even though Christine did fully exit, is no longer involved in Little Kickers. There's she called it a shared ethos. I think there's um, yeah, a caring about her. I think a just a focus in the right places that we were like, oh, we could relate to that. That kind of bled into her team.
Hmm.
And what we learned eventually was, I think, really a key part to the franchise community. Because in the due diligence, at least in our experience, there are folks who are managing that process get a little, I'd say, itchy or reluctant to go contact other franchisees. So we didn't know the Little Kickers franchisees. We really didn't.
Okay.
But as we got to know them, we realized that they were really, I would say, the product of, but they were screened by people who had similar kind of view of life. I'd say similar culture, and so that has been awesome. I mean, I've
Hmm.
really been impressed with the Little Kickers community. Um, and also the team that came, the Little Kickers team that eventually integrated with the Soccer Shots franchise support team that we now call the Stronger Youth Brands franchise support team, um, has worked fairly well together. Now, we didn't have a lot of redundancies, so they didn't have, a strong leadership team per se. And so, the Soccer Shots leadership team was able to kind of take over and we were able to feather in those who do a fantastic job in their various areas of business and support. But there's been learnings. I think that there's skepticism whenever one is acquired.
Hmm.
I think, for us, that first year, While we did believe there was some low-hanging fruit, some things that we had learned at Soccer Shots over the years that could benefit little kickers and perhaps vice versa, that quick change was not going to be our friend. And dictating that change is even worse, even though we
Yes.
have the right to do that. So we really took a posture of like, hey, let's listen, let's learn, let's go ahead and we had Little Kickers previously had not put out a franchise business review, franchisee satisfaction survey. So we did that.
Hmm.
We formed a franchise advisory council, a marketing advisory council. And I think that served us well, Frank, because there were some things that were confirmational for what
Right.
okay. And some things just were really different. We're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. While we do offer soccer or football, as they call it, outside the United States, to little kids in franchising form, there are some differences, and their history is a little different than Soccer Shots, and so I think that has paid off. I'd also say there's a flip side to that,
Hmm.
which is maybe some impatience. Hey, you guys come in, you've got a bigger team, this concept, oh, you've got quote unquote big money behind you. You can do all, move mountains and fix all of our problems. And I'm like, yeah, no, we
No,
can't.
it
But
doesn't
let's
work that
let's
way.
let's effectively diagnose before we start, ascribing solutions. And so that has been received well. And so now we're kind of on a path of saying, okay, now I think we've effectively diagnosed what are some things that we can bring to the table that can improve, and how do we then execute that?
Sure. Justin, I think it's such valuable feedback for founders that are listening to this, because you have some founders who are thinking of maybe becoming part of a platform, and you're kind of giving them sort of a live look in on what life can look like for their franchisees. So what I'm really hearing is that you guys you just can't communicate enough, because nobody wants surprises. And I would say franchise, or not franchising, but franchisee businesses, when you're running this business from your home, it's a very lonely life, right? You're working by yourself, and yeah, you communicate with other franchisees. And what we often do when we're working by ourselves and we're lonely is we start thinking of, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to me as I'm a Soccer Shots franchisee? And Justin just told me that they acquired Little Kickers. How is this going to impact my life, right? Isn't that the primary question? And probably Little Kickers franchisees thought the same exact thing. What does this mean to me? This US based company just bought us. Or is Soccer Shots going to come pouring in here? Are they going to take me out? Are they going to turn everything to Soccer Shots, right? Because we start just envisioning everything that can go wrong.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I think and this continues to be something that I'm reminding myself of and telling the team is, even when there's an absence of communication, what typically fills that void is like doubt, is like, cynicism,
It's normal.
is concern, right? I mean, I liken it to like when you're sitting on an airplane and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and you hear nothing. You start getting irritated, right?
Right.
But if you have a pilot that comes on and says, hey guys, we're going to be 10 minutes late, here's what's going on, maybe you're slightly less irritated, but at least you're kind of being informed. And I think, that the communication piece is a huge one, and one that we haven't perfected. I mean, I also think that as I've gotten a little more mature in this, of challenging the franchise community, that it's not a two-way street, and that, you do need to open up your memos. You do
Right.
need to attend conventions. You do need to, you need to respond to your FBCs when they reach out to you and schedule meetings. So,
Right.
making sure that we are, doing as we've advertised, but also saying, hey, this is how we expect you behave around here, within
Mm,
our organization.
nice. So, Justin, where does Stronger Youth Brands go from here? What are you guys looking to do?
So I mentioned we've got a really great partner in Susquehanna Growth Equity. They aren't a traditional PE firm.
Hmm.
They're internally funded, so there's no LPs that are pressuring for a timetable for the next turn. So we're happy for that. They've been very owner focused. So we were all pleased whenever, we partnered with Little Kickers. And right now, we've got irons in the fire, Frank. I'd say, but there's no pressure to kind of force fit a concept or a group that doesn't quite fit where we want to go. I mean, I'd say we're steering clear of any, soccer anything that's directly competitive, probably
Hmm.
sport, but some compatible youth enrichment offerings that, maybe could benefit from what we have right
Hmm.
now with kind of a robust franchise support team with some of the experience that we have, that we could help accelerate growth and strengthen their franchise concept. It's cliche, but the people definitely matter. Is the concept viable and
Right.
scalable? I think that's one. And then, are the people that we're, linking arms with a cultural fit and yeah, bring some competency to the table that enhances what we're doing. So I'd say, we don't have like a number in mind of, we need to add this many concepts to
Hmm.
the platform. We're going to grow organically through little kickers and soccer shots, continue to keep our head up and have conversations with folks who may be good fits with SYB. And if that happens, then we'll celebrate that. And
Hmm.
if not, we'll continue to hammer away with soccer and football.
Fair enough. As a CEO of the platform, I'm curious if you would share some insights. I think this would be great for founders to hear this. What are maybe some of the red flags that you've seen when you're looking at brands and you go, no, what are some of the top reasons that you've seen again and again that you're like, no, this is not a right fit? Why are they not a right fit?
Well, yeah, let me address that in a couple of ways. I mean, maybe some of the more obvious is, I think we are looking at kind of the unit. So is the franchise, like, how viable is it? Right? What type of franchise is it? I mean, for us, we're kind of trying to stay focused on territory-based youth enrichment,
Hmm.
programs. Are is there any indication that those can scale organically, or are those kind of hobby franchises? And we'd like to, per our comments previously, like all in full-time businesses. Again, on the franchisor level, wouldn't expect a founder to have a fully fleshed out, franchise support team, but it would be nice to see, like, is that founder, there being able to kind of cobble together a team. And I think that in our line of business, you can stay a one-person band or you can become a conductor. And I think that happens at the franchisee level and at the franchisor level within our kind of businesses. And so I think indicators that know, like, they're becoming conductors,
Right.
there's an invest, once again, recurring, broken record. Are they investing in this? And is there kind of potential for us to come in and be like, oh, hey, there's things that we've been doing at Soccer Shots and Little Kickers. We can come alongside it and help you with this particular platform. Or, we don't, we want that expertise, that subject matter expert within that offering. We're not looking to take that over. We want to make sure that the distinct brand stays distinct. But that's kind of what we're looking at. I think also I've referred to this a little bit, but I'll maybe expand on this. I think cultural alignment matters.
Hmm.
I think it does. I think that being able to, for us at Stronger Youth Brands, we've got three core values that we've identified that are super important and is kind of our DNA, right? It's we care,
Okay.
we own it, and we're stronger together. And so, I don't think you can be in this line of business and not care. Parents want their children to be cared for by coaches, instructors, employees want to be cared for by their employers, franchisees want to be cared for by their franchisor. Like, I think caring matters in
Hmm.
this line of business. I think owning it, like having a mentality of like finding solutions, driving us forward, making sure. I mean, there's a difference between renting a house and owning a house. And so, we want that kind of mentality no matter where you are in the organization, is like really own it. Like, and then stronger together. Listen, I come from playing team sports. We do, Jason, Jared, and I. There's you know all roles are integral, and so and there's a need for us to collaborate and work at this, that like no one of us has all the answers. So, we are stronger together, and that mentality, I think, needs to be brought to bear for anyone who kind of comes into SYB. I think just becomes a little bit of it's not so secret, but I think it's part of the success of any franchise system
Hmm.
is getting input and insight from various parties. And then once again, having the ability to make decisions based on that. I think you can get incapacitated by too much, eventually as a franchisor, let's not abdicate our responsibility to make brand decisions for a community. And so there's a leadership challenge I think we all face, where there's this, being confidently competent and also being humble enough to listen and flex when you need to.
Absolutely. That's the balance of franchising for sure. It's a very unique relationship. Justin, this has been incredible. I've enjoyed talking with you today. If someone was interested in working with you guys, or maybe interested in being part of your brand, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. I mean, you can email me directly, justin@strongeryouthbrands.com. You can check us out at soccershots.com, at litterkickers.com, strongeryouthbrands.com. But yeah, first name at strongeryouthbrands.com. And I'd be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. All right. I always finish with this thing I call the franchise tip jar, because the community is so generous. So if I was going to franchise my company tomorrow and I'm this aspiring franchisor, can you give me maybe one piece of advice that you'd recommend before I jump into franchising?
One piece of advice, huh? And you were just looking to franchise.
Yeah, I have a business and I think I can franchise. I think it's franchisable and I'm thinking of doing this. What's maybe a piece of advice you'd give me before I go ahead and hire that consultant?
I think one of the things, when I look back, once again, I'm only going to call upon what I know. And I'm not sure if it applies to everyone. So how's that for a qualifier? I think the fact that Jason, Jared, and I were running Soccer Shots in different places, I think was really important. I think that if you have one successful location, that's awesome. And that might be it. That might be all that you want to do. But if you want to franchise, there's so many other things that I think that you have to learn in terms of replicating. Some of it's just letting go. Some of it's like, hey, this is how I do it. How do I actually explain it to other people how to do it? So I would say, to summarize, I think if you have one successful unit, is don't franchise until you maybe have two. Mm-hmm. And figure out a way to hey, can I have two successful locations? And then that comes, hey, can I actually hire two leaders to run that without me being there? I think that's really a test to whether or not it's not fully franchisable, but that you can kind of see a future with multiple locations, with multiple operators, because I think that introduces all sorts of opportunities, but also challenges, multiple locations.
Justin, I agree with you 100%. I think that is phenomenal advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being on. And again, it was great catching up with you. I wish you continued success with Stronger Youth Brands, man.
Thanks so much, Frank. You're kind of an OG of our industry. Thank you for all you've done for youth enrichment, what you did at I-9.
Thanks, man.
Much respect. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.